Today, China is defined by hyper-modern megacities of glass and steel. But these skylines are built on the foundations of 11 distinct imperial dynasties, stretching back 5,000 years. Human settlement here in the Yellow River Valley gave rise to the Xia and Shang dynasties. During the Shang period, around 1600 BC, early rulers began carving symbols into turtle shells and ox bones to predict the future. These oracle bones form the earliest known body of Chinese writing. This illustrates a political philosophy introduced by the subsequent Zhou dynasty, the mandate of heaven. The logic is strictly cyclical. The cosmos grants a ruler the right to govern, provided they maintain justice and harmony. If the ruler becomes corrupt or fails to protect the people, they forfeit that mandate. This established a rigid baseline for the next 5 millennia. Emperors were not seen as absolute, untouchable gods. They were stewards. If they could not deliver agricultural stability and economic prosperity, the population had a legally recognized justification to rise up and replace them. Over the centuries, control over the Chinese landmass repeatedly fractured. Warlords divided the territory, and ruling families violently overthrew one another. Yet, despite the political chaos, a consistent set of shared social values and traditions continued to bind the population together. This shared culture is often described as a three-legged pot. 2 of those legs were Daoism and Buddhism, which provided a spiritual framework focused on natural balance and individual enlightenment. But the third, thickest leg of the pot was forged during the turbulent spring and autumn period by a philosopher named Confucius. Confucius developed a strictly secular system for organizing society. He emphasized 2 main concepts: Ren, meaning human compassion and benevolence, and Li, which translates to proper etiquette and duty. Under this system, everyone from a peasant to the emperor had a specific role and set of obligations to fulfill. By prioritizing education, familial loyalty, and a deep respect for authority, Confucianism created a resilient societal bedrock. Emperors and armies came and went, but these cultural traits outlasted every imperial house and still influence Chinese society today. In 221 BC, the era of fractured warring states ended. Qin Shi Huang used overwhelming military force to consolidate the territory into a single, centralized empire. The Qin dynasty enforced a single written script, common currency, and uniform weights and measures. They also initiated massive state projects, most notably connecting northern fortifications into the early Great Wall to repel nomadic invasions. The subsequent Han Dynasty stabilized this territory and opened the Silk Road trade routes to the west. Their 4-century reign was so successful that the primary ethnic group in China still identifies as Han today. Fast-forwarding through the cultural golden age of the Tang Dynasty, the empire reached its technological peak under the Song Dynasty in the 10th century. It was during these eras that China developed what are now called the Four Great Inventions: the magnetic compass, gunpowder, papermaking, and woodblock printing. Centuries before the European Renaissance began, these Chinese technologies were already driving global maritime exploration, altering the mechanics of warfare, and enabling mass literacy across continents. The imperial cycle pressed on. The Mongol-led Yuan dynasty gave way to the Ming, which eventually fell to the final ruling house of imperial China, the Qing dynasty. By the 19th century, the Qing court had turned inward. While Western nations were rapidly industrializing and expanding their empires, China's leaders limited foreign trade and stifled technological adoption. The cost of isolation became clear during the Opium Wars. British and French forces, equipped with modern steamships and artillery, overwhelmed the outdated Qing military. To the public, these defeats and the resulting unequal treaties signaled that the ruling family had forfeited the mandate of heaven. In 1911, an uprising known as the Xinhai Revolution, led by political philosopher Sun Yat-sen, toppled the Qing. The 2,000-year-old imperial system was over. Without its technological edge, the nation fractured. China endured decades of civil war and foreign invasion from Japan. The population was starving and exhausted, leaving the nation desperate for a new unifying system. In 1949, after a grueling civil war, Mao Zedong stood in Beijing and proclaimed the founding of the People's Republic of China under the Chinese Communist Party. The early decades of the Republic were defined by a rigid, centrally planned economy. The state attempted to force rapid industrialization through a campaign called the Great Leap Forward. Instead, the collectivization of agriculture led to massive crop failures and widespread famine. This was followed by the Cultural Revolution, a socio-political movement that destroyed historical artifacts and ground the nation's economic output to a near halt. By the late 1970s, strict central planning was failing to provide basic sustenance for the population. Historically, a government unable to feed its citizens stood on the precipice of failing the ancient test of the mandate of heaven. The turning point arrived in 1978. Following Mao's death, Deng Xiaoping secured leadership and initiated a policy known as Gaige Kaifeng, reform and opening up. This line graph tracks Chinese agricultural output. Notice how flat it remains until the late 70s. The spike begins when farmers in Shaogang village secretly agreed to meet state quotas, but kept any excess crops for themselves, breaking the Iron Rice Bowl, the long-standing system of guaranteed but meager state provisions. Deng expanded this pragmatic approach into the four modernizations, targeting agriculture, industry, national defense, and science and technology. By allowing private enterprise and foreign investment, China transitioned into a mixed market economy. The state established special economic zones along the coast to attract foreign capital. Sleepy fishing villages were rapidly replaced by massive manufacturing hubs, pulling hundreds of millions of people out of extreme poverty. Across 5 millennia, China has been fractured by warlords, conquered by nomadic empires, and torn apart by internal revolutions. But its core survival mechanism remains unbroken. Whenever the system stalls, the state reclaims its mandate to rule through pragmatic economic reinvention and relentless technological innovation.